Morning, Wendy or Terry.
Good morning. Yes, it is Terry.
Okay, Terry. Good. How are you doing? I should have just said morning, CAB. How come it's recording?
Yeah, it started to record. Well, it starts recording automatically. So let me just pause.
How is everyone?
Good, good. We
Good,
all
good,
had our
thanks.
little technical challenges, I think, this morning.
Today is one of those days, but it's really good to see everyone on. Thank you so much for joining.
Happy to be
I
here.
do recognize that we have some other persons on. Tekla, a warm welcome to you. Renata, thank you so much. Shane, it's always a pleasure seeing you.
Same here, Wendy.
Is Terry on? Thank you. All right, so I just want to take a minute to recognize our team from all the way over in Suriname who have joined us this morning. Good morning, Revelino and Fozia. Did I get that correct? Okay, I will assume that I did, not hearing anything. And it gives me great pleasure this morning to introduce you all to our members. I just want to ask for a few minutes. Let's see if anyone else joins on, and then we will kick off promptly at 5 minutes past 8. Is that okay?
Yep.
How are things going in Trinidad with the pandemic? Anything? Is there an improvement, or are things getting worse?
Shane, you want to answer that, boy?
Tekla, I don't follow the news and the numbers, but based on what I'm getting, it's pretty bad. I know the effects or the attempts at trying to deal with it definitely having a negative impact on businesses and people and income and livelihoods for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. There has been no marked decrease in the number of positive cases and deaths.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been fairly consistent, and it's a lot.
Yeah, I guess the impact on economies is definitely having it. You know, I think it's happening everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Not a nice time to be in government at all.
Sure, right. That's why topics such as this, people just being able to cope in a pandemic situation, it's just so relevant
It is.
for everyone, including us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. In fact, I think Shane, when you said you don't listen to the news, that's certainly a self-preservation strategy.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we'll be talking a little bit about that in terms of psyche, Tekla. When I understood that, simple stuff, simple laws of life, I call it, we become what we think about. And when we think about, what we think about, it's what we hear, what we see, being the two most important senses. I remember calling the cable company and asking them to cut it off because I started to protect what was going into me.
Yes. Especially when you have children.
Yes.
It's just so important.
Yeah. No, definitely.
We're having Wendy, we're having a nice chitty chat.
Yes, I've been listening. I've been hearing you. And yes, I certainly understand. I'm happy that we are able to gather this morning. I'm hopeful that, the effects of the pandemic will begin to lessen. I know that Trinidad is going through a bit of a hassle right now. St. Lucia also is facing its own challenges. Our numbers obviously are nowhere close to what we're seeing in the more international countries, but our death toll is one that is definitely alarming and concerning. I think we're at 77 now, and I'm trying to no longer pay attention to those figures because it can really, really become heavy, But it looks like it's going to be just the 7 of us this morning, and I think that is okay because, like I think Terry would have prepped you, we will record today's session and then we will use that going forward. You may also see that we will use snippets depending on what we need to do. So I really thank you for bringing your energy this morning, in spite of the fact that our audience is very, very small. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, I will begin. Over the past 12 months, our lives have been turned upside down. For many of us, our homes and workplaces have become interchangeable. And for many organizations, that has meant a whole new paradigm in terms of how we interact with our colleagues at all levels. It has meant coming to grips with radically different approaches from labor relations. From a labor relations perspective, perhaps nowhere has this transformation been more so than in the banking community. The volatile global regulatory climate, the introduction of new technology, new players in the financial services space, mergers and acquisitions have all posed their own challenges for longer than we've been dealing with the coronavirus. Together, however, we can and we must overcome. We have done so before, and we certainly will do so again. Today, it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce 3 outstanding coaches and teachers who will walk us through how we can build a winning culture, how we can best leverage our people and put them in positions to achieve personal and organizational success. I'd like to start with an introduction to Mr. Shane Ram, who joins us from Trinidad this morning. Shane is an executive life coach and property investor, author, and a sought-after global keynote speaker. He is the founder of Don't Settle for 7, Go for 10 business coaching, an education system for the new way of living. Shane is the CEO and Step HR Consulting, Step HR Consulting, founder of Scientific Happiness Life Coaching, and a property investor. His strikingly effective coaching process shows individuals and corporate teams how to get unstuck so that they can create the personal lives that they want while becoming a mega star at work. Now, who doesn't want that, right? Shane works with CEOs, corporations, 6 to 7 figure business owners and entrepreneurs to increase revenue, grow their businesses, and live more fulfilling lives. The 10 life. So Shane, thank you again and welcome. And I cannot wait to listen in this morning. Thank you.
All right, Wendy, thanks a lot. Good morning, everyone, and to all the attendees and the people who are going to be listening to the recording afterwards. Good morning. So I want to start off with, I'm not that creative this morning, so I'm going to start off with a simple question. It seems to be the most popular Zoom icebreaker. So just to get a Caribbean perspective. So the question is simply, do you like pineapple on your pizza? Type yes. If yeah, Wendy, it seems to be the question of the day. So Fawzia says yes. All right, Renata says, oh yeah. All right, probably a Caribbean thing. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Great. So I'm going to talk about the impact of the pandemic on the psyche and productivity of people and effective programs for resilience. So we're talking about coping, we're talking about resilience, and I think they're a little bit two different things. So I hope you had your coffee this morning, because I'm going to go a little bit deep, because when we talk about psyche, it necessitates going a little bit deeper. So what am I going to cover in today's session? We're going to look at a functional view of human behavior and productivity, and in response to the pandemic, and functional view from a sort of what I call a root cause perspective, because that's where I think that we need to really work at. The roots will determine the fruits, as we like to call it. While we talk about the psyche, it's very important to talk about the nervous system, because, so we're going to do a little biology this morning, or remind of what you did when you were probably 13 or 14 years old, because when we think about productivity, we want to think about taking action. And at the end of the day, what are the systems in our bodies? And we have to think about our mind and our bodies as well in terms of taking action and productivity, because the pandemic is something that has caused people to freeze, so to speak, as one of the responses, and we'll talk about that. And coming out of that would be some of the effective programs to improve the psyche and productivity during the pandemic. And I am always about going for 10. So how do we move from coping to resilience? Okay, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. So let's look first at what I call the anatomy of human behavior and productivity. What happens with all of us? And if you are an HR, a leader, any type of leader where you're responsible for people, this is going to help you to understand, first of all, what's going on with you and what's going on with them. Because I hear a lot of talk about, mental health, and we're not able to see the signs of it. So when you understand this, we're just going to make an assumption of what's going on with people. So we don't need to know exactly what's going on with them, but this is just generally at a very subconscious level, how people act to certain or react to certain events. So basically, this is what happens. There's an event, for example, like the pandemic. And from that event, we're always doing this. We are interpreting what that event means. Is it dangerous? Is it safe? Is it an opportunity, for example? And based on how we interpret that, we feel something. We have an emotion from that, how we interpret the event. From that, we tell ourselves a story. We have some thoughts, and they're mainly protective, because the human being is geared towards survival and protection. So our stories that we tell ourselves are typically protective. And then what happens is that determines the thoughts, the stories that we tell ourselves determine our actions, our inactions, and behaviors. So in the context of productivity and behaviors and actions, if we understand what's going on with people, this is what's going on with people every minute of the day. We have events and we always interpret in those events. We have an emotion because of how we interpret those events. We tell ourselves a story, we act, we don't act. And that's basically how it operates. So let's just look at how maybe it might apply to the pandemic. So the event is the pandemic. How do most people, or how have most people interpreted? What do they believe? I'm unsafe. The world is unsafe. Okay. And what emotions are that going to drive? Well, of course, fear, anxiety, worry, for example. What stories you tell yourself? I don't want to die. Am I going to die? Okay. So, and then what's the response? Well, flight, fight, or freeze. Okay, this is a typical response to fear, worry, and anxiety, and we have a lot that is going on. Okay, so I'm putting this in the context of speaking about productivity. Well, how do we expect to get productivity when people are frozen? How do we expect to get productivity when people are in a flight mode, for example? And we'll talk about understanding what's happening with people and how we could utilize that now to come out of this successful, to come out of this and during this to be more productive. So basically our peripheral nervous system, again, if we want productivity, we are talking about action, and the part of our body that is responsible for action or inaction is the peripheral nervous system. As I said, some biology from 13 or 14 years old. Okay, so we have a sympathetic nervous system, which is the active part. It boosts blood flow and that sort of thing to get the body ready for action. And then you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is about relaxation and meditate and the more calm aspect of it. So what happens though is that when we have stress, when there is fear, it activates the sympathetic nervous system. And what that does is activates fight, flight, or freeze. So if that's what's happening with a lot of people, if their response is stressful, if their response is fear, then how do we take what is natural and turn it into something that is productive? So what I talk about, well, let's fight. Well, let's fight for our goals. Let's fight for our business. Let's fight for our health. Let's fight for our safety. Okay, that's what I say, and that's a challenge for leaders and for HR personnel looking on. No matter what position you're in, if you're a leader, if you have a family, you're a leader. Okay, let's look at flight. Okay, I'm saying let's change the flight from fear to what's goals, towards short-term goals, what I call pandemic goals. Let's change our focus and flight towards those things as opposed to flight from threat, okay? So the sympathetic nervous system helps with focus, okay? So one thing I wanna say is that it's not good to be in an activated sympathetic nervous system for too long because stress for too long is going to cause both mental and physical health problems, okay? But while we have it, how could we use it now to shift our focus from threats to rewards, to possibilities, to goals? You know, I was talking to one of my clients recently and she said, okay, and she's from Trinidad, in the lockdown, this new lockdown, let me figure out what's the opportunity, what is the goal, what am I going to use this period to achieve, okay? And this is where we could use the fight or flight system to work towards goals. So what I say to people is get focused on a task or a goal, okay? Because you're going to have that focus, you're going to have that energy. And I tell people, create pandemic goals, okay? Convert your abstract goals to concrete ones. Have all your how-to goals action-based, because we're talking about productivity, we're talking about action. Break them down into sequences, a few hours instead of, you know, like trying to knock something out in 3 hours. And I'll talk about that if we have the time in something that I teach executives called strategic time blocking. Okay, Track your progress and set clear criteria for what is considered a win. And most importantly, celebrate the wins with your people regularly. Set small goals, celebrate the wins so that, you know, they get focused on the goals and they shift away from the focus on the threats, okay? And also some other quick exercises to help you to deregulate, downregulate the sympathetic nervous system is intense exercise, because when we are fearful and we produce all of that cortisol, it's high energy and we need to burn it out essentially, otherwise it can turn into negative consequences, okay? So now let's shift to the parasympathetic nervous system, and you guys would be familiar with these things. So that is about, you know, calm, relaxation, so that we could think more clearly about how to act and how to be productive in this pandemic. So of course, things like meditation, mindfulness, light exercise, yoga, deep breathing, and some of these things, guys, can be done at the office, can be done while you're serving someone at the counter. Okay, it can be done. You just need to research a little bit. You know, you just need to focus, and I'll talk a little bit later on in what organizations can do, what some organizations have been doing. For example, I did some stuff for BP recently, and they are big into mindfulness, and the CEO has, you know, gotten an app and sent it out to all employees to utilize to help with mindfulness. So those apps have notifications so that you may get a notification while you're in the middle of the day to just have some mindfulness. It could be as simple as, you know, putting your hands on your navel and pushing it out so that you make sure that you deep breathe. Stimulate the vagus nerve, and that is the longest nerve in the body between the gut and the brain. And I don't know if you've ever noticed that the gut kind of looks like the brain. And when it comes to mental health, there's a strong connection between gut health and mental health. So I'm not going to go into detail in that, but certainly look into it. It's a big factor. And of course, if persons are not able to do this themselves, I recommend the company to make coaching, mentoring, even therapy available to their employees. Okay, so here's the deal now. So as I said, the peripheral nervous system consists of two parts, and the peripheral nervous system is responsible for taking action. And as we're talking about productivity, this is so important. But what I've circled there is something called the autonomic nervous system, and that means that it happens spontaneously, it happens unconscious to us. So most of the things that we're doing, guys, are subconscious. We're not aware of it, okay? And that's 90% of the mind. So we spoke about our emotions. The pandemic has been traumatic. Where does all of that exist? It exists below our radar. So most people are literally not in control of what they're doing, okay? So, so you see that they're in the psyche and the mind, the conscious controls 5% of your life, and that's what you know of yourself. Okay, that's critical. The 95% is what we don't know about ourselves. So in every moment, we're not conscious of how we are feeling. And so I'm going to talk about how we're going to bring that into our consciousness, because that's really the only way to move from coping to resilience, is to bring to the fore what we have no idea, but it's still controlling our life, our responses, you know, below the radar. Okay, so in terms of building resilience, you know, this is a buzzword these days, but I want to talk about it from a psychological point of view. And psychological resilience is the ability to mentally or emotionally deal with a crisis or return to the pre-crisis status quo, so to speak. Resilience exists when the person uses mental processes, okay? And I want to highlight that, because that means that we just can't hope that we will build resilience. It's a process, and I'm going to share with you how we can utilize that process. Okay, so we utilize mental processes and behaviors in promoting personal assets and protecting self from the potential negative effects of stressors. Okay, so 5 steps to productivity, if we want to put it that way. So typically what is happening in the face of fear and stress is that the sympathetic nervous system kicks in. okay? And you know, we don't feel to eat because, as we said, you know, who needs food when you're trying to run from the tiger, right? But then, you know, the graphic where the lady says, hello, I'm the prefrontal cortex, and I can see that nothing is wrong. Okay, because there's a lot of fear, but when, and we're running from emotions, and that is from the center of the brain called the limbic part of the brain. And what this process does, and what I teach in emotional resilience and emotional intelligence, is how do we activate the prefrontal cortex? And that's where logic comes in. Well, am I really going to die? This thing has a, you know, whatever the figure is, at least 98% survival rate. Okay, so nothing is really that wrong, but until we do that, then we can't get into a calm state where the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and we could be calm and we could see things clearly. We could reduce the threat and the emotions in ourselves so that we can be more productive. Okay, so my 5 steps for getting to productivity is: 1, you have to become very conscious. It's a conscious process. You have to catch your protective patterns, your flight, your fight, your freeze patterns. You have to check it. And you know, this is where mentoring, coaching, and leadership comes in, where you know, you trust people, because I think one of the things I'm going to talk about is how do we as leaders help people to feel safe. That is absolutely critical, because right now this pandemic represents danger. Okay, so one of our biggest jobs as leaders is to help people to feel safe. Okay, and with mentoring and coaching, we could help each other, and trust, we could help each other to point out when we are actually in those protective patterns. Okay, the second step is to identify what's the story I'm telling myself. You know, I'm going to die, I'm going to lose my job, the economy is going down, I'm at risk. Because the body is all about protection and survival, everything, every story translates to, and I'm going to die. Okay, the pandemic is bad, economies are bad, I'm going to lose my job, I'm not going to be able to buy food, and I'm going to die. Okay, so people get into that protective pattern. So identify the story. Thirdly, and this is where the prefrontal cortex comes in, is it really true? Is it rational? And I guarantee you that 95% of the times the answer is going to be no. Okay, with a high survival rate, the likelihood that you're going to die is slim, very, very slim. But you need to become aware of that. And that's what kicks in, is our protective. It's primal, our primal instinct kicks in. So what I encourage people now simply is to choose the powerful thought. No, I am going to survive. What can I achieve during this pandemic? What's the opportunity? Every challenge lies in it a seed of opportunity. Okay, so we change it from a protective to a powerful, and most importantly, take action. Okay, take action. So these are the 5 steps instead of the 5 previous steps that I explained to you, that what people go through on an unconscious, normal basis every single minute of the day. This is how we live consciously, and we really question and we rationalize what we are thinking, what we are telling ourselves, because our thoughts determine our actions, determine our results and productivity. Okay, I hope this is making sense so far. I hope I'm not going too fast for you guys, but I know we have limited time. So just to say, this is the root cause. I think a root cause of a lot of mental health challenges, what we see as the symptoms, there's really a root cause, and we will get there. So if you could type into the box, I want you to quickly feedback. Do you think that the pandemic is traumatic? Or has been traumatic to people? All right. Very traumatic. Loss of life everywhere. So it's traumatic. Okay. Thanks for your feedback, everyone. So here's what I have been doing for the last 10 years, but this has now become relatively popular, made popular by people like Oprah Winfrey and leadership gurus like Robin Sharma, is to understand that people, leaders even, have traumatic experiences in their life. okay? And we're not able to be as productive as we can be until we deal with this. And Oprah, who has interviewed a gazillion people, you know, the best coaches, gurus, psychologists, preachers, you name it. And she did a CBS interview in 2018. And what she has found is that unless you fix the trauma, you're working on the wrong thing, okay? A lot of people shy away from this because coaching at this level requires some level of vulnerability, okay? But I repeat, and it's a very profound statement, and she says, you know, there's nothing wrong with you and why you can't be productive, but something happened. And unless we figure out what that thing is and deal with it, we're not going to be as productive as possible. So unless you fix the trauma, you're working on the wrong thing. Okay, so what I also recommend now from moving from coping to resilience is, you know, coaching, mentoring, therapy if people need it, that is trauma informed, evidence-based, neuroscience informed, and also take a polyvagal approach to things. Now, we in the Caribbean, some ways behind, and unfortunately, as far as I know, I'm the only trauma informed coach in the region. There's some clinical traumatologists around. That's very different from evidence-based. You know, willing to train people in this concept, but this is where the world is moving. There's a greater acceptance of this, that we understand what trauma is, because it's something that is highly misunderstood. People think it has to be, you know, what we call big T trauma, which is, you know, violence, physical abuse, sexual abuse, that sort of thing. But it could even be, you know, a kid left back at school and everybody has gone home. Okay, that could be traumatic. Okay, so very important to understand that, you know, I have this simple formula. It's called TARE, to understand what leads to results and what it is that we have control of. So thoughts plus emotions plus actions equal results, because our thoughts determine our emotions, determine our actions, that determine our results. Guys, these are the only three things that we have control of. But as we have seen, a lot of those thoughts and a lot of those emotions, we are absolutely clueless about what they are in our reality. Okay, so so basically, what can HR and leaders do? I say put on your mask first, no pun intended. All right, build resilience for yourself, because you have to be able to help your team, help your organization. So put on your mask first. Help build resilience in your leadership team, because I think because of the nature of leadership, they have the ability to impact so many people, but you can't give from an empty cup. Okay, so leaders first need to build their resilience. Okay, help people feel safe. Again, we just went through that the pandemic is traumatic. It means that people are in a state of fear. They don't feel safe, and therefore they're not going to be as productive. So our main role right now is to help people feel safe from a physical point of view. I know, you know, banks have taken and financial institutions have taken all the necessary precautions. You know, the 1 or 2 times that I've been in, we see people cleaning, sanitizing, social distancing. So continue with that, but also keep people safe emotionally and mentally. Create short-term pandemic goals and rewards. Get people focused on short-term goals, okay? Because right now, in a state of worry and fear, it's really difficult to talk about vision and that sort of thing. Get focused on short-term goals. So you as the leader should have the big vision, but break it down into smaller short-term goals. Make sure when people hit it that you reward them. Offer helpful apps to staff. As I said, I did some work for BP to help them with some of their mental health efforts. And from the top down, the CEO is big on mindfulness and put it into action. You know, he shares apps. I'm not familiar with all the details, whether the company has purchased the apps and shared it with the staff, or whatever, but you look into that and do that. Offer emotional resilience training. This is very different from emotional intelligence. And I've shared with you how deep you really need to go and do this consistently to really build resilience. It has to be something that is ongoing, has to be routine, it has to be habitual. And for that, that's why I suggest offer coaching, mentoring, therapy that is trauma informed, or there's some element of that, because that's going to help with people's mental health as well. So this is what the majority of my presentation, Wendy and the team. Now I have some other little tidbits, other slides that I have there in terms of some productivity hacks. I don't know if I have the time to run through that. Wendy, it's just going to be about 4 slides. Let me know, or I could cut off right here, right now.
Well, I think for the benefit of those on, and certainly I have remained very engaged as you went through, but I'm definitely looking for some hacks, Shane. This is the life. We need them, right? So please, go ahead.
All right. Well, good. But that is not to say that the deep work that I talk about. I know everybody's looking for the microwave solution and the hacks, right? But that is absolutely critical to build longer term resilience, because we're just not sure how long this thing. Okay, so one of the things in terms of productivity is really what I call strategic time blocking. I encourage leaders to work in short time frames, 45 minutes as the case may be, depending on the particular task. But I tell people to block. I prefer to print out my schedule as opposed to use something online, because it's in my face, it gets me to focus. So what are some of the things that are important? Sleep, okay? Exercise, working on your emotions, learning and growth, family time, really very important. Your career and your business, as the case may be, whatever actions that you need to take there. So when I work with executives and leaders, I have a full schedule. I want to know everything to ensure that you are putting in the time to do the things that are going to help you to be successful. The easiest part is actually blocking. The hardest part is saying no, managing distractions. But that's where, we talk about setting boundaries. So it's more than time management, is strategic in saying, these are the things that I need to work on for my mental health, my emotional health, to be able to be productive, to be the best leader, the best father, the best mother, whatever you need to be. And I think about it holistically. So block time into your schedule for each of these things, because what does not get planned does not get done. Okay, and this is what I've been using for the last 10 years. It's designed by Robin Sharma, one of the top leadership gurus, and he actually, out of this, which he developed 10 years ago, has his new current bestseller, which is called the 5 a.m. Club. And as you see, the day starts at 5 a.m. here. And there is workouts, daily goal setting, diet, gratitude. I think it's an absolutely wonderful little scheduler that helps you to focus on the things that are important. If you see down at the bottom, the AM protocol and workout, exercise, the daily goal setting, the focus, what am I going to achieve today? The peak diet, we spoke about the relation between gut health and emotional health. Gratitude, that helps you put into an emotionally positive state. So so some quick strategies. I hid one of the slides about managing distractions, but what I tell people is, turn off your notifications, deliberately go into them to check on them, because those pings all the time are absolutely distracting. I tell people, disconnect the automation on your email. It comes in every second and it distracts people. I said, there's this feature where you could turn off that, so when you work strategically to do your emails, to respond to your communication, that you download and you deal with it once and you're done. Close off your email and then bring it up at the other appointed time to work on your emails and your communication and respond to your phone calls. So I encourage leaders to dedicate certain times of the day to do that and not have it open all of the time. So I know a lot of people working from home now, and we know this famous video with the child distracting the guy while on a live call. But what I tell leaders, managers to do, get up early, work while everyone is sleeping. Now that you have to work with family and kids around and work from home, schedule time, deliberately, strategically schedule time with your kids. Communicate with the schedule. I have my daughter most mornings I do homeschooling with now, and I have to say to her, yes, I want to build a puzzle. Yes, I will play Play-Doh with you, but daddy got to do this. This is my schedule, and I promise that I'm going to do that with you. We're going to build the castle, whatever it is. We're going to water the sunflower seeds. That's a project that she has on right now. Most important, fulfill the time commitments that you made with them, right? Deliver on your promises, communicate, so schedule, communicate, and fulfill. Okay, work in 45-minute time blocks and manage distractions. And I think most people know where to find me, but this is easy access.
Wow, Shane, that was absolutely fantastic, power-packed. I took copious notes as you were speaking, and I mean, I can immediately begin to think of some of these items that I can put into practice, right? So I'm the guy at the very end with a little one bouncing in. I think both Terry and I at the secretariat were quite a bit last year. I think everyone we spoke to is intimately familiar with our family, and that's okay, you know? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we just need to figure out how best do we introduce them, because we know that they're going to come bounding in at some point. So thank you so much for that. I'm certainly looking at booking some sleep time as well, actually booking it. But like you rightly said, booking it is one thing, doing it is another. So finding ways to de-stress and decompress to make sure that these times actually make sense and are productive sleep, productive work, productive output are certainly some of the ways that we need to go. So Shane, thank you so much. I don't think that this is the last time that anyone is going to see Shane collaborating with the CAB. So please stay tuned to our listening audience out there. Shane, if you don't mind, just a couple minutes, let's see if we have any questions at all coming in from anyone before we move forward. Let me just take a quick look. Okay, I think we got everything as we were moving forward, but I will still give an audience. Lillian, good morning. I don't think I acknowledged you when we first got started, so thank you for joining us. If there are any questions for Shane, I'll pause just for a minute before we keep moving.
All right, thanks again, Wendy, for the opportunity while we wait for any questions coming in. And then, as I said, most people just Google and you'll get my contact details, and feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. All right, so it looks like we are good to continue. I note a comment here, Shane, helpful pointers. So thank you for that, Revelino. All right.
Put it into action, most importantly.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Someone else is asking if we will get the presentation. Yes, we will build it into our platform so that you have access thereafter. Thank you for that. And please feel free to speak out. You do have the opportunity to interact and interface directly with our presenters here this morning, so they don't only hear my voice. Mm-hmm. All right, so we will keep moving ahead. Shane, thank you so much. I'm not sure if you have any sleep time scheduled or if you will stay on with us.
I'll stay on. I blocked my time for CAB this morning.
There's a good time to cry there. Thank you for that.
Shane, you don't have to go water some sunflower seeds.
No, this afternoon. So yeah, that's part of their science project.
That's a nice one. All right, great. So up next, we are going to be speaking with or hearing from Renata Tulsi. Renata is the president of the Caribbean Center for Leadership Development Limited, a think tank established to foster best practice leadership in the Caribbean. With more than 20 years experience, she's considered a management mind shaper, known for her innovative approaches to optimizing individual, team, and organizational effectiveness. As an area director for Crestcom International in the Caribbean, her organization facilitates their Global Action Learning Leadership Transformational Program with proven return on investment, which is now the leading one of its kind. They have operations in Barbados, Jamaica, and Suriname. Their numerous clients include several of the region's most respected and profitable organizations. Apart from her exciting career spanning education, aviation, we need to talk a little bit more about that one, Renata, finance, and multinational, Renata was also a University of the West Indies lecturer in business strategy, marketing, and workplace protocol. She has also facilitated numerous practical and engaging sessions for both local and regional cross-dimensional teams responsible for executive leadership development, strategic visioning, talent management, assessment center, and corporate rebranding. Renata, welcome, and again, thank you. Renata will take us through igniting workplace accountability. I hand over to you.
All right. Good morning. Morning, everyone. Good morning to this esteemed panel. I'm happy to meet everyone. Wendy, thank you specifically to CAB for the opportunity. Shane, I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I took some copious notes, and it's really a great precursor to what I am going to speak about. All right. So if you allow me to just share my screen, which I'm going to do now, and I'm also going to share sound, because I do have a video, and let's hope that works. All right. All right, is everybody seeing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, so welcome to our session on igniting work accountability. It's an important yet sometimes not addressed topic, especially in this pandemic period. And I really like what Shane said in terms of some key points. This period, this time as leaders, is about helping people to feel safe. That's first, but helping ourselves really to feel safe. And that's all about our own self-care and being productive and getting results. So we are in an environment, as you know, in terms of high stress, job fear, job loss, lockdown blues. Shane talked about online schooling. It's really unprecedented. And I must tell you, no one has the 100% effective inoculation for this situation. But I am going to hopefully share with you some frameworks, some ideas, some nuggets, so that we can really be able to cope and consider in this period. So good, just to tell you a little bit who we are. Crestcom is actually in over 30 countries. Well, I should say actually 60 countries. We have 200 licensees internationally. So we've been around for about 30 years. And who we are really is the go-to experience for leadership and organization transformation. And so millions of managers across the world would have been exposed to our program and context. So I'm just giving you a quick context. This is our regional footprint. So we do have operations across the region, but we've conducted training programs on the region as well. And this is all just a quick snapshot in terms of our clients. We have many clients, as you can see, in the financial services sector across the Caribbean region. Our program itself covers 12 competencies. And as you go through, you ramp up on these skills. But today, I want to focus on the first one, which is drive for results. And that is where accountability and how we drive for accountability really stands out. So let's get into it. Accountability. What does this topic really mean? And essentially, accountability, what we drive for, accountability is about ownership and initiative. It's such a relevant topic today, given the theme of this session, this masterclass on people and the pandemic. And it refers to people just stepping up, as difficult as it is, to doing what is best, and even getting results at this time of pandemic, and especially in an environment of what I would call flux and fear. So accountability and results are inextricably linked. And when we talk about igniting accountability, that's like the secret sauce, really, to get a high productive team to high performing teams. But it's not easy given the situation. So we're going to look at some ways to address it. And as you know, given the situation, people in a pandemic, it is business unusual. Yeah, sometimes just getting out of bed and making it the keyboard is really enough. And I'm sure Shane probably looks like this sometimes behind his computer.
Yep.
You know, it is a stressful situation. And then sometimes we just totally confused, you know, being it's Monday, no, it's Thursday. I thought it was Tuesday, you know, isn't it Friday? So it's really a difficult situation, and it's really traumatic for many of us. And it's traumatic in the sense that we are faced with so many issues, people issues back in our organization, and really being able to have those conversations are important. So what we're going to do, our learning goal simply is to understand that there's a concept called the 3 pillars of performance. We're going to consider some of the benefits and some of the barriers to accountability. And one key benefit is that benefit of trust. We got to trust our people. This is a time of trust. And I'm going to show you a video on that. And be aware of a model that's called the 8 essential elements. So good. So what are some accountability issues that might be facing your organization right now? Let's see in the chat if you see any, what might be some of those issues. Yeah, you can throw it in the chat. And there are many, and we're going to address some of them. But one of the key things is that there are 3 pillars, what I would call 3 pillars of performance. And those are responsibility, empowerment, and accountability. And they work together really as the components in terms of us being enhancing our performance and even getting our team members to so do. So responsibility is really the task, the details, what I need to do, and for whom, and by when. So in a sense, the responsibility part is I'm the owner of the task. The next one is empowerment. It's the feeling that I am enabled. I do have the power. But 2 questions arise. Do I know what needs to be done? And do I have the authority to be able to do it? And the third one, which is in the realm of which we are speaking, is the accountability, or what we call the owner's mindset. So whereas responsibility is taking ownership of the task, accountability is taking ownership of the outcome. See the difference there? One is about taking ownership of the task, and one is about taking ownership of the outcome. But together we need all of 3. It's like the 3 legs of a stool. If you pull one out, it becomes imbalanced and we fall. And so we need to have all 3 to be able to be effective and really to stand up. There's an interesting quote that says, you steadily grow into becoming your best as you choose to be accountable and accept responsibility for improvement. So the main thing here, and this is a quote by Stephen Challenger, who wrote the book, Becoming Your Best. The main thing here is that you actually have a choice. Accountability is a choice. Yeah, may you choose it. Good. So if you were to define accountability, I'm sure many terms, many characteristics come in. Anyone wants to take a stab and throw into the chat what might be some of those definitions of accountability? Anybody? When you say accountability, what words come to mind? I'm sure there might be some words coming to mind. Let's see if we can get something on the chat. Yeah, personal responsibility, getting the task done, yes. Yeah, anything else? Accountability, it's a word we use so often, huh? What else? Trust, yes, Fazia, trust, important. Anything else? Well, if I were to ask you, from the word accountability, how many words you think you can make? Anybody can take a guess? Throw a number into the chat. Let's try. If we have the word accountability, think of how much how many words you can make from that one word. 9, 2. We're real low on this, huh? It's in the hundreds. Yes. Ready for the answer? There are 595 words that we can make from the word accountability. Isn't that something? 595 words. And what does that say? Is that we have countless opportunities to be accountable to others and to create an accountable culture and to help people be accountable to themselves. Yeah. So, right. So some definitions would be, we have a number of different definitions. Words like trust. Let's see what else we have. We have trust. We have, when we think of accountability, we think of doing the task, doing the responsibility. We have commitment. We have ethics. We have core values, credibility, governance. All of those words are important when we talk about accountability. Yeah, and especially given the pandemic situation now, you know, perhaps, and as Shane mentioned, we need to have some pandemic goals. And one of those goals is really to be able to live some of these attributes despite the difficult situation around us. But most importantly, if I were to give you a definition of accountability, it's really about taking ownership of an outcome, taking ownership of outcomes through our consequent choice of actions. Yeah, so that is what accountability is. Taking ownership for outcomes through our actions. So basically we own it. We own the situation, that owner's mindset. Good. So what are some consequences of a lack of accountability? Well, we have the us versus them. We have the silos. We have lost opportunities. We have increased turnover. We have reduced quality of work, poor collaboration, little collaboration, strategic sabotage, negative return on investment. So there are lots of consequences when we don't inculcate that accountability discussion and that accountability culture. But there are benefits of doing so. So some of the benefits are greater employee participation, feeling of, you know, like I know I can do it, that competency, creativity, innovation. If there's any time we needed the skills of creativity and innovation, it is now. Increase morale, improve customer service, greater performance. You know, I'm reminded of a story when, and it's an interesting story of accountability. I used to work at an organization and a very high performing, very results driven company. So the CEO and HR were having a discussion, and the discussion was in the area of putting down a leave policy. And the CEO announced, listen, this policy is going to be unspecified. There's not going to be no terms like sick leave or bereavement or personal leave. And it's also going to be uncapped. We're not going to cap the number of days that persons can take. So of course, HR was aghast. It's like, oh my God, it's going to be chaos. When we go in when you go in the company, nobody's going to be there. Everybody's going to be in the beach. You know, thinking what's going to happen. But interestingly, do you know what happened? I'm sure you probably might guess that never happened. The policy was never abused because the team members worked together. There was that tremendous peer accountability, and they worked and they became very cohesive as a team. So there are some really tremendous benefits to this thing called accountability, but there are also barriers. So what are some of those barriers? Well, it's about having unclear direction or big picture. When there's no ownership, persons don't live up to that owner's mindset. People may not have the skills, so they're unable to be accountable for the task and even the outcome. Poor team or peer accountability, lack of consequences, not seeing people modeling the behavior. Why should I be accountable if the other person is? Seeing it, modeling, and distrust. Yeah, so these are some barriers to accountability, and it's so important as for us to be able to overcome those barriers at a personal level, and at a team level, and at an organization level. There's an interesting quote that accountability is the glue that ties commitment to the result. Let's not underestimate the power of this thing called accountability. The glue that ties commitment to result. Good. So we're going to look at a little video. Steve Farber is one of our Crestcom video faculty members. He has written numerous books. Quite an interesting speaker. His most recent book has a very interesting name. It's called Love is Damn Good Business. Right? So he is, in fact, one of our more exciting video faculty members from Crestcom. And the interesting thing is he used to actually live and work in Trinidad, and he loved it. He knew all about doubles and roti and carnival and the beach and everything. So we're going to take in Steve while he talks about trusting your team. Yeah, and if there's ever a time as we continue or we start the accountability discussion, is about trusting your team. Gone are the days where you can walk across in the office and look at people's desk and see what they're doing. Yeah. So the issue of trust, the issue of setting clear performance standards, the issue of being able to set clear or define expectations, the issue of being humane and understanding the whole person, all of that is something that we have to consider these times. So let's take in Steve. He's going to be about a 4-minute video, and let's enjoy and take in some of the nuggets. Shane, I'm going to ask you to give me a thumbs up if you're hearing the video, the sound, okay?
Imagine that making things happen was so much the norm that you never even had to think about it, that taking a course like this would seem as silly as taking a course in learning how to blink. Well, maybe there are companies like that, but I haven't seen one yet. Although I have seen many, many teams who operate that way. So let's focus on that, your team. Regardless of what the environment of your whole company is like, can you turn your team's culture, whatever the size, into a high-performing, accountable powerhouse? I believe you can. It comes down to your willingness to prove to people that you trust them. How do you do that? Well, it starts with giving them more discretion as to how they spend their time and utilize their resources. If that seems difficult or painful to you, if it's hard for you to relinquish the control that you've worked so hard to get, that you've been clinging to, you're going to need to first ask yourself these 2 critical questions. Do you trust them? Should you trust them? Lots of research suggests that you should, and that trust will pay off. For example, in a recent study called Work Schedule Flexibility, a Contributor to Employee Happiness, Penn State professor and labor economist Lonnie Golden and his colleagues Julia Henley and Susan Lambert found that workers' happiness and productivity is highly correlated to their having the freedom to manage their work time to fit their personal needs. So what does that suggest? If today's leaders want to strengthen their culture and ramp up their staff productivity, they need to find ways to let people come and go as they please. Too radical? Okay. Try experimenting with Golden's research by looking for ways to inject a little more flexibility and control into your team's work schedule. For example, does someone on your team have a parent-teacher conference, a kids' soccer championship, an important doctor appointment? Then do whatever you can to let them make the decision to go and give them the opportunity to figure out how and when to make up the lost time and get their work done. Does that make you squirm a little bit? Listen, are there people in this world that would take advantage of the situation and treat their newfound freedom with all the responsibility of a teenager with the keys to a new Ferrari? Of course there are. I'm not going to suggest that people will never take advantage of you or screw things up when given the opportunity. That would be naive. But Golden's research and many other studies suggest that most of the time, people will meet the challenge beautifully and they'll work even harder and more efficiently. Give people your trust, and more often than not, they'll prove to you that they're worthy of it. I know I'm asking you to do a very challenging thing, and I can guess what you may be thinking. If I give them control, they'll take advantage of me or screw it up, and then I'll get blamed, I'll lose my job, the bank will take my house, and my dog will leave me. Let me tell you about one manager who set aside that line of thinking and put this theory to the test. Keith's career as a software engineer with GE took him from the UK to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He eventually moved to California to work with a medical device company as a leader on the oncology team. As a new leader on a new team, Keith wanted to make a significant demonstration of his belief and trust in the staff. So he gave everyone a voucher that they could use in a variety of ways. Number one, they could go out to lunch anywhere they wanted, anywhere, as long as they went with someone else on the team and they talked about work. Number two, they could buy any book they wanted. Number three, they could spend up to $1,000 to get any software or software upgrade that they needed for their work. Word of this meeting spread like wildfire throughout the whole organization, and before he knew it, Keith got a frantic call from his boss, who was not only angry, but terrified that these people were about to fritter away the company's hard-earned cash, but convinced that his boss was wrong, Keith let his team run with the voucher program. 3 weeks later, Keith did a quick accounting of the expenses and was absolutely shocked at what he found. The entire group, all together, had spent a grand total of $300. He'd given them the cash because he wanted them to spend it on building the team and growing their knowledge and increasing their productivity. They, on the other hand, were so honored by his gesture that they were being exceedingly thoughtful and strategic about how they were going to invest the money they'd been entrusted with. And no surprise, they went on to become a tight and productive team. So, how about you? Can you find a way to extend real, hardcore trust to the people that you work with?
Certainly something to think about, especially at the time when we're dealing with an invisible workforce, a time when the boundaries between work and life and home is just blended together. You know, I don't say people are working from home. I actually use the term or the phrase, people are at home working. A slight change it, but that is the reality. You know, trust, honesty, humility, transparency, and accountability are the building blocks of a positive reputation. And trust is the foundation of any relationship. Yeah, certainly something to think about. Good. All right. So 8 essential elements. As I mentioned before, you can't see this remote workforce, this invisible workforce. So what are some ways, what is a model that can help us to foster accountability, ignite that work accountability? And we have actually a framework of 8 elements. The first is being able to empower capabilities, being able to provide feedback, collaborate, set clear expectations and purpose, identify consequences, remove fear of failure, something that Jean actually mentioned earlier, that fear of failure, be able to measure the results and to encourage responsible risk-taking. So let me take you through quickly each of these 8. The first is empower capabilities. And this is about us really supporting and encouraging our employees, us finding the strength within ourselves to have these courageous conversations, being able to provide avenues and development for learning new skills. And if there was any time that we had to learn new skills, it's in the year of 2020 into 2021, this pandemic period. Let me just ask you, what are some of the new skills that people have had to ramp up or need to know in this period? If you can just throw on the chat, what are some skills, new skills? For sure, resilience, yeah, Shane. Yeah, any others? Patience, absolutely, Wendy. Any from our participant, time management, yes? Anyone else? For there, flexibility, oh, for sure, yeah. Zoom, yes, Zoom management, I hear you, for sure. Yeah, this whole virtual world. Definitely, great. So these are actually some of these skills, and there are many others. So how are we inculcating or encouraging these capabilities? That's important. That's an important consideration as we ramp up some of these new skills. Good. In terms of empowering capabilities, it's also about having the conversations, being able to engage in those performance conversations, and we'll talk about those in a while. Good. And the others, if you think about some of the others, and I'm reading from my slide to move, but the next one is actually being able to provide feedback. And we want to be able to have a situation where we can actually engage, be able to create an environment, a culture, so that persons can actually provide feedback, just that communication. And that is so important for us as leaders to be able to do that. Good. We want to, provide structured buddying, coaching, and mentoring opportunities. And that was mentioned before. We want to be able to help persons ramp up in the situation, so encourage those capabilities. Being able to provide feedback, as I said, inculcate a culture of communication. Listen for gaps, discrepancies. Effective messaging is key. Have a cadence with all employees, not just some. And that will include strategic communication and crisis communication. We're in an environment where we go to work one day, we have to close an office. You may have to close a branch or a department because of a COVID case breaking out. How do we ensure that there is effective communication around that? How do we communicate to our employees that the situation has happened? One of our clients actually used to have these regular communication, and with going online now, he has decided to have these Zoom town hall meetings where he keeps them abreast in terms of what is happening, what is the situation. So just that rhythm for feedback is important. The next is the ability to collaborate. Unless we help people connect, if there's ever a time that we need to have people connect on work goals and collaborate, it's now. And to create opportunities for them to learn and support each other and support each other's roles and responsibilities. And even if it means sharing or rotating jobs. The other one is set clear expectations and purpose. Now is a time in this pandemic, our people need to have some sort of purpose to work towards, some sort of vision. So being able to explain that big picture, what is our future orientation? It's not do or die, as Shane said before, we can be in fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah. So what is the big picture? We certainly want to be in good flight, that ooh la la mode. And so it's important to share that post-pandemic hope with your people, that purpose. And in terms of expectations, really have clear, written, specific, measurable actions and expectations. And of course, communicate verbally. I am someone who sees things visually through images. So understanding your target, your audience, when you are communicating and setting expectation, and use a blended approach, perhaps through words, writing, speaking, through images, whatever it is. Being able to identify consequences, this is important. To be able to assign clear consequences associated with the responsibilities and be able to implement those consequences. We're in a situation now where we have to think ahead. Yeah, the future is so undefined. We think, actually, is there even a future and how that future will look? The future is now. We're crafting it while we're talking, while we're planning. So what are some possible scenarios? What are some consequences? And let us build those consequences into our decision-making, into our scenario planning. The next is remove the fear of failure. That's important. So it's about allowing employees to make and learn from the mistakes and really empower them. If you remember the 3 pillars, empower is one key pillar, key component, empower them. Provide solutions and coaching to avoid mistakes in the future and make mistakes a learning opportunity. I recall one of our clients, I'm going to say change your words, change your mind. One of our clients, we have the owners are speaking, and their words are actually words of melancholy in this situation. And here it is, you have the CEO and the HR now has to filter those words and make it a lot more meaningful for the staff to really understand and embrace. So in the situation, what is your mindset? Are you a victim or are you a victor? And that translates into the words and the world and your whole mindset around you. Change your words, change your world. And of course, key, measure results. Allow employees to identify how they themselves are going to measure their own standards. Have those conversations, self-accountability, create check-in points to see progress. I had a CEO once who, whenever he asked someone for a task or to bring a project or report, if they said, boss, we're not ready right now, he would say, listen, bring what you have and come. And those words just resonated with me. Bring what you have and come. What are those milestones? What are those check-in points to ensure that there is progress, and set and document those milestones? And the last one, it's important to do that because again, in a pandemic world, things go all over the place. We don't even know who is who anymore. The boss asking me the status of work from home and me at 11 a.m. trying to think, well, who is this talking to me? So being grounded in terms of those accountability components are so important. And the last one is responsible risk-taking. Encourage, they're working from home, they're at home working. We want them to be able to challenge the status quo, encourage them to take risks, do things differently, be innovative, be creative, but in a calculated way. And, never stop experimenting and trying to find new and different solutions. Yeah. So these are actually very packaged with a nice bow, the 8 essential elements to igniting our work accountability. Empowering capabilities, providing feedback, collaborate with our team, expectations, sharing the purpose, the consequences, identifying it, removing that fear of failure, measuring results, and encouraging the risk-taking. Yeah, so this is a nice nugget, a nice framework for us to be able to go back to our workplaces and think about like a little checklist. And if you want, you can actually take a photo of this and you're going to get the recording anyway. But these are some 8 essential elements to really keep us going, especially in this time of a pandemic when we have to have accountability discussions. We have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to be able to create accountable teams around us, even if we cannot see them. Yeah, good. And the key pointer, this thing about accountability, it starts with you. It starts with me. It's not about them. It starts with us. All right. So good. As we conclude, key takeaways. So there are a couple of nuggets in this short period. We talked about the 3 pillars of performance. Yeah. Responsibility, empowerment, and accountability. We explored some of the benefits and the barriers. Our video was on trusting our team, and we wrapped it up with looking at the 8 essential elements, yeah, to igniting that accountability. I want to ask you to actually take a minute to think about, having learned these concepts and having been exposed to this material, what am I going to do differently tomorrow? What am I going to do differently for the rest of the day? Yes, if you just think about, because you want to be able to translate ideas into action. That's what we're about. That's what CAB is about in terms of hosting these masterclass sessions. Translate ideas into action to be able to get results. So really give some thought as to what you are going to be doing differently. Good. Just as I end off our program, just tell a bit about what we do. It's not about training, it's about turning ideas into action and get results. That's what we do at Crestcom. And this is our curriculum. And the main thing I want to tell you, so it's a 12-month program, but if you look at in August, we actually do a deep dive on the topic of accountability, igniting a culture of accountability. What I showed you was just a little snapshot, a little excerpt from what we do, but we actually take a much more rigorous approach to really going deep on this topic of accountability. If you are interested in articles, blogs, anything on the topic, certainly you can check us out at crestcom.com. That's www.crestcom.com. We have lots of interesting articles on accountability. Yeah, and many more topics. And if you need to contact me, this is my information, renata.tulsi@crestcom.com. All right, cool, good. I want to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your engagement, your participation. Thank you to CAB for allowing me the opportunity. All right, over to you, Wendy.
Excellent. Renata, thank you so much. I have a couple of questions just to get us kicked off. I'm sure there are other persons listening in this morning who may also have one or two questions for you. So before I jump in and try to monopolize the discussion this morning, let me just reach out, see if anyone has any questions. Please raise your hand if you do, so that we can call on you, or feel free to type your questions in to the group chat. Don't be shy, folks. This is your opportunity ahead of August to get some additional nuggets. Okay, so let me get started and perhaps we'll warm up the room as we go. Renata, in your presentation, you spoke about trust, the element of trust, and it is a massive and significant one, particularly in this environment where we really are required to trust each other to stay honest. Let's do what we need to do. You know, the old saying when I grew up was a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, right? So would you say that maturity is a function of the element of trust? And knowing your team then by extension means that you should have a better understanding of how much trust you invest to ensure that industry goals are still met during the period?
I think yes, definitely. That's a good question, Wendy. Definitely maturity. But I think the more fundamental consideration for trust is your own leadership or personal presence. So maturity is one thing, and that has to do with age and experience. But it's really about you, what you say, how you inculcate that trust, because trust starts with you. So trust is about you caring about yourself in a particular way, you maintaining that personal integrity and exhibiting that, walking the talk and exhibiting that in every aspect of your daily life at work and even at home. Yeah.
Okay, I know that you said trust and maturity and even age, but sometimes I think particularly now with this generation where they are perhaps equally or even more motivated to produce because they just want to keep challenging themselves and keep going at a pace. I don't necessarily think that age anymore is a function of maturity. I think people now are way more advanced than we are, certainly from a technological standpoint. My team can tell you I'm a dinosaur and I'm not ashamed to say it. And that's part of my own trust in them, that I can say to them openly and honestly, you handle this one or walk me through something, right? And I think that in this environment of the unknown, perhaps it's even more necessary that we do that. I'm sure Terry is having a good laugh at me in the background there. But yes, to be able to recognize our own shortcomings, shortfalls, yes, and reach out to ask for help is really important.
And it comes with experience. These are unprecedented times, as Wendy, as we know. So yes. I'll give you an example. One of our clients, they had to close a branch, and they have a protocol that there's a WhatsApp group, but there's also the responsibility to advise the managing director, right? Because this a COVID case has been happened there. So what happened, and this was just yesterday, I was told about this. A message was sent on the WhatsApp group, but no communication was given to the managing director, who ultimately has the authority to close a branch, right? So it is interesting dynamic, it's unprecedented. But it's also a time where we have to think about what we do. And we have to draw on our experience and draw on persons around us. So let me tell you, they're working from home. Whereas in the office, if they were working in the office, it was easy to go across by Tekla and say, Tekla, listen, we have to close the office, what to do? And she, just brainstorm the thing. Right. What is the next step? But now you're in your home and you're in your environment, you're siloed to some extent, and you just have to act. You just have to act. Yeah. So it's a number of things we need to consider. Mm-hmm. The experience, what has been precedent for us, what are the protocols that we have to put in place. All of those things combine to engender trust, if I may say.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as well, both you and Shane spoke to it in your presentation. I'm sure that Tekla can also jump in on this one. In my previous life, there's something that I used to say to my team, and I drew this from another one of our leaders then. Lights, camera, action, right? Where it really is, particularly for those of us who do not have the luxury of being able to work from home, we're still customer facing, and so we have to be present. The realities of our own lives do not fade away. They don't go anywhere. But I think the maturity and the trust comes in from a leader. I trust you to be able to put this on hold for a minute or talk through it with me so that I can figure out how I can support you to ensure that the level of customer satisfaction, the external customer, is not impacted, or at least not impacted negatively. So being able to tune out or being able to overshadow what you're experiencing in your personal life, because we know that that is definitely a challenge now. There are so many competing priorities in people's lives. Their children may be working from home, but they still have to be, happy, bubbly, and smiley at the office. These are some of the real life challenges, and perhaps Tekla will discuss it, because Tekla is going to take us into leading through the unknown. So before we segue into Tekla's presentation this morning, I really want to say, Renata, thank you so much for that this morning. You certainly gave me a lot to think about. I'm hopeful that the others on the call today who joined the masterclass are finding value from our discussion so far. And it's not too late to give me a little thumbs up, just to let me know that as I reach out to touch and do my little pulse check, that we are meeting your needs. So please allow me now the benefits and the pleasure, thank you, Renata, of introducing our next panel discussion panelist, Tekla de Tourville. And Tekla, a CMC, MBA Managing Director of Celestial Self-Development Center, is a certified life coach and management consultant. She also functions as the chief trainer in her company and a consummate professional with a wealth of knowledge and experience in the field of leadership, business administration, performance management, human resource management and development, employee motivation and training, mentoring, coaching, and change management. She functions both as a management consultant and a workshop and retreat facilitator. Tekla has published 2 DVDs, Celestial Gems 1 and 2, containing motivational speeches delivered to NGOs, public and private institutions. Tekla holds a master's degree in business administration from the Cave Hill School of Business, University of the West Indies, Cave Hill Campus, Barbados. Her experience as a trainer spans 25 years. She served as president of the St. Lucia Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture for 2 consecutive terms, from 2003 to 2005. She's a certified Franklin Covey facilitator. In 2015, she acquired the Franklin Covey Leadership Training franchise for East Caribbean. Tekla, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for being with us. I will hand over this morning as you take us through leading through the unknown.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Thank you to CAB for the opportunity to share this morning. I must say, Renata and Shane, thank you very much for your presentations, very enlightening. I'll see some common threads pulling together in terms of some of the things I'm going to, you've made my task much easier, so I will be able to sort of skim through some of the things, especially things like the whole question of accountability and where Shane spoke to, productivity at the different levels. So thanks again for all of you on the call. And it's really my pleasure to be here. So we will look at this session as a sort of journey, a journey through this pandemic, the journey, the pre, the during, and what we perceive the post may or may not look like. But for now, we clearly in that, we in the throes of it. And it's really important. I think in most instances, our culture pre-COVID would have impacted in a significant way how we're able to move through this session as well as what's to come. But again, there are certain skill sets and competencies that this environment has really forced us to pay particular attention to. And it's not, that maybe perhaps we have no choice. The dynamic environment, a change environment, an unknown and unexpected, something that has been thrust upon us. There are some skill sets, some competencies that we must acquire. So for those of us who have not, buckle down and zeroed in on those competencies, the sooner that we can bridge that gap, the better it will be for all of us. So we will look at a couple, some of the areas that we will be looking at. We look at the role of communication, in the entire process. Whether it's current or post. We will look at the competence of emotional intelligence, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. And very, very important in this environment. We will look at change management. In the change management, I will pay attention to the Franklin Covey change model. We did get quite a bit on managing performance, so I will just sort of skim through that. Building resilience, Shane did deal with that at the psychological level. And we will close with the employee engagement. Again, COVID has really thrust the need for employee engagement on us, and we have no choice. And with that, we will use a video to highlight that. So that being said, let's move on to this first competency that we speak about. When we speak of communication, we all know what communication is about. But in this instance, we need to pay particular attention to the role that communication plays in every facet of our of our operations. And any manager, any head of department is in effect an HR manager. And gone are the days when we can just sit and say, well, hey, pass this on to HR, because we have to sometimes take decisions on the fly. And because we have that direct communication with our team members, we impact how they view the organization, we impact their productivity, we impact the quality of their customer service. Our interpersonal relations, how we engage with customers, all of these areas are impacted by the quality of our communication. Even the level of trust that we heard so much about in Renata's, contribution. Trust, communication plays a critical part. Sometimes it's, that somebody has said something to you, again, through communication, you've communicated it to somebody else who you should not have. So there are lots of issues that the whole question of communication impacts. So the productivity of our people, the quality of the relationships that exist between us, the culture of the organization, what outcomes how people understand their roles. All of these are critical. In an environment where we've been in the office setting before, where persons had the opportunity to, have a chat here, this was a particular type of communication. But COVID has forced us into a situation where we need to rethink our mode of communication. And it's it's a hybrid in some cases where we, there may be a split. We work sometimes remotely, some in office, or some people, go back and forth. It means that we have to be adept at both, both modes. And this is where, the point when Wendy brought up a while ago in terms of the use of the technology. It's not that it's not a question, but we can't be satisfied with I don't like it, I don't know it. Again, we may have to depend on the younger, generation to help, bring it on board, but we also need to continue to make efforts at getting to the point where we need to get. We may not be, we may not get where we would like to be, but I think we need to put in the effort. So with our communication, this is our opportunity to look to improve on the relationships with our team members, because particularly in this environment, the relationships between team members, this is really, really critical. And it can have such far-reaching implications for everything. So the number of team meetings we hold, whether we have scheduled one-on-ones with our team members, how do we treat with feedback, whether it's to reinforce a good behavior or to redirect something, somebody has not done the way they should. Like I mentioned earlier, the level of trust. Because once there is mistrust, what it does is that it takes more time to achieve anything. And it also, everything costs more when there is mistrust in an organization. And sometimes the mistrust is there, but we do not want to recognize it as that, because in most instances, we may have contributed to it. So as leaders, we need to be aware of what our behaviors, the things we do that can, bring in that level of mistrust. Through our communications, again, our opportunity to establish clear, what are the expectations? Again, in this environment, it's not just about how much time people spend working, is what the output is, what are they able to produce. The time would be flexible. They would deal with the various times, like we heard from Shane, schedule time for certain things, start early, so it's not about to say, but when I call at 8, you weren't at your desk. The trust comes in. Yes, you call at 8, but 8 may not have been the best time, because that's the time, that employee had to be seen about, getting the children ready for school, or, beginning their online classes with them. So it's not about the time spent, it's really about, what is produced, the outcome. Again, the other thing that is greatly impacted by the customer service, by COVID is our customer service. And particularly now that in some instances, if you have to work, if you're in a face-to-face environment, you're dealing with people who are wearing masks. So you've eliminated that facial expression. The body language is skewed. It's not what it used to be. It may be that you may have to ask a person to repeat themselves. You may have to ask a person to speak a little louder. You may have to lean forward a little more. There's certain things you would have to do, and silence even becomes a plus there. In some cases, you may just have to give a little time, be more deliberate in your listening, your active listening, but we realize that customer comes in, the communication process there's something missing, and you have to give it some more attention. And when we are forced now with more remote meetings, that is the norm. And for some organizations, it will remain the norm. Some of us, claiming Zoom fatigue. That, may or may not be so. But again, it depends on how we manage it, how it's structured. We need to for instance, one of the things I would like to recommend is that if you're going to have remote meetings, have some guidelines. So that there's the guidelines. For instance, you may want to say at the beginning of the meeting, everybody's camera is on. You may want to say things like, we ensure that one person is finished speaking before somebody begins. You can assign roles to different people within that one meeting, and because what you want to do is to ensure that you use the technology to its greatest effect, and that everybody gets an opportunity to be engaged. And we also have to take into consideration the peculiar circumstances of some of our team members in that environment. Everybody may not be able to go on camera because they're able to find a suitable spot in their homes to have that meeting with a camera on. Some persons may, again, because they may be, the space is limited, there may be children and other people running all over the place, and that person may, so again, if it's a question of, you start off with your camera, as many people as can have their cameras on, it would be better, because at least you have that additional opportunity to see facial expressions, to see people's body language, to get a clearer sense of, of what's happening. But again, if you're going to use the technology, let's be efficient about how we go about it. Let's have our guidelines in place. Ensure that people are familiar with the use of the technology. That if they have to get some free lessons, or we have to organize specific training, all of these are things that we need to do. So let's and if we plan in those meetings, let's ensure that there's a detailed agenda, that that the people who are invited are the people who need to be there, that there's a structure about it, that you assign roles and tasks to different people, who's going to take the notes, who will be devil's advocate, who you would use to stimulate discussion, to ensure that if everybody is silent, that there's somebody here who will pose the first question, that you have your tech people who will provide with the additional support that is needed when it's needed, that you have a bridge person, who recognize things are going south and want to bring it back, north. And, so all of these are things that, we don't just have a meeting and just take it for granted that everything will go smoothly. We need to plan, and we need to execute. So I've try to go through the whole importance of the communication as quickly as I can. That takes us to the other competency that I spoke of earlier, and that is emotional intelligence. Shane gave us a high level of the whole psychology behind some of those relationships. I specifically want to deal here with the concept of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, that most of you may know, is a term that has been around for eons, but in recent times it has been popularized by a guy called Daniel Goleman. There's actually a text called Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. We often hear that our IQ may get us into a job, but what we require to sustain and to maintain and to grow within any position requires a certain level of emotional intelligence. And the more emotionally intelligent we are, the better our work life and personal life could really look. So it's really a critical skill, and both from a professional and personal perspective. Okay. Emotional intelligence really, it helps us, particularly in this environment where we may be dealing with cross-generational workforce. It's also helpful in an environment where the whole archaic approach of command and control no longer applies. We need to be able to inspire people that we lead. We need to be able to understand our own emotions and how our emotions impact the people that we lead. We need to understand their emotions and how their emotions cause them to behave. Okay, so you know, in the older days, you'd hear people say things like, you know, leave your emotions outside and come into the office and, you know, be all gung-ho, and, you know, and that's what we want. But we as human beings, we have emotions, and they, no matter how we try sometimes to, you know, conceal them, it does come up. We may be smiling, but the hurt in the eye is visible. It's there for everyone to see. So we can't tell people to leave these things outside. Yes, people should manage themselves. But again, we have to give them the tools, and we have to assist them to be able to get to that place. Okay. If you ask somebody to leave their emotions outside the door, you may as well ask them to leave their enthusiasm, you know, and their drive and their passion for the job outside as well. And certainly that's not what you want. So we'll just have a quick look at those 5 critical components of emotional intelligence. Again, these are the critical components by Daniel Goleman, and they are, the first one is self-awareness. It really means understanding your own emotions and the effect it has on others. And Goleman's research has shown that the self-aware leader is more confident, is more candid about their own strengths and weaknesses, and they have a capacity to reflect, which allows them to make good decisions in terms of what feels right, when combining their gut sense with hard data, not just going by gut, but combining the gut sense with hard data, and so that the outcome is a fruitful one. So again, awareness, self-awareness, be aware of who you are. Be honest in making that assessment. The other critical component is self-regulation. And what self-regulation is the ability to control or redirect our impulses. When a leader is self-regulated, they're more comfortable with ambiguity. They open to change. They can suspend the judgment. And somebody who is able to self-regulate is highly adaptable, and they better able to manage their own emotions. So again, self-regulation, you know, a critical one. And as an effective leader, this is a skill that we need to learn. The other one is motivation. And it's you know, our own self-motivation. It's a passion, how we work with our energy. That is not only about monetary incentives, but a leader who's highly motivated is goal-oriented. That person is optimistic, and that person is committed to the mission and vision of the organization. And this person has a long-term purpose. They ask themselves why, and why is what guides their decision making. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why is this necessary? You know, that to question this question, but again, self-motivation, empathy. One, we in this environment, empathy is an absolute. We all need it. We all need it. And what it does is that it relates to the understanding of the emotional needs of others. And if you're an empathetic leader, you're able to manage cross-cultural sensitivities. You're able to empower your employees and colleagues, and you're better at retaining good talent. Often we hear that you know, good talent is difficult to keep, and some places have high turnover, again because you hear the saying that people they don't leave jobs, they leave their managers. And so sometimes how managers interact with their team members is usually a reason why people, you know, disengage. some of them leave, but some of them, they disengage, but they're still there. And that is where you can have huge problems. So it's, how well are we as empathetic leaders, how well are we in tune with the individuals within our group? How do our team members feel supported? Do they feel heard? Do they feel valued? Do they understand the contribution that they're making towards the bigger picture? All of these are things an empathetic leader, takes into consideration. And the final, not least of them all, is the social skills. How do our level of proficiency in managing relationships? Are we able to develop, meaningful networks? Do we build rapport? And are we able to find common ground with, when in a discussion? If you need to be socially savvy, but while being socially savvy, you also need to maintain that level of authenticity. And through your communication, you need to be able to inspire your team members. So again, 5 critical components of emotional intelligence. And like I said, emotional intelligence is an expansive topic. It's very topical. You can always do some further research on it, and you will certainly get a wealth of information on this topic. And like I said, empathy, really, they're all important. But I think we need to be, especially in this COVID environment, being empathetic is really critical. So this takes us to the other thread that we speak of, and that is managing change management. That we know, the change, it wasn't a decision that was taken that we're going to change from this to that. It was something that was thrust upon us, that we didn't know where it was coming from. We didn't know what it was going to look like. We didn't have a clue. And the greatest planning that, I would have liked to see the organization that had the excellent plan to prepare for COVID, because there were so many unknowns. And so, this is one that required a particular mindset for us to navigate. I know some of us have been in the place where we behaved as if it were an extended holiday. I recall hearing from some feedback from a session that we conducted, where a supervisor actually said that and that person was speaking from the financial sector as well, and the person said some of our staff feel that they grant you a favor when they come into work during this COVID environment. And, I mean, when that was said, I said, wow, that is something. Again, if we in the mindset where it's an extended holiday and everybody else is at home, so why do I have to work? Then clearly, that's what, that's the sort of thinking you get. So again, how a person with that mindset, as leaders, we need to use our communication skills to inspire them, to reach out to them, to find out what their specific challenges are, and to see how we can best work with them to not give them solutions, but work with them to overcome some of the challenges that that they face. And that will require not just a group meeting, but because everything may not apply to everybody, but you need to have those one-on-ones so that you get to speak with people where they're at. So if ever there was a time for change management, the time undoubtedly is now. Okay. So what we need to look at is, how do we go about this process? Change, it brings uncertainty. In some cases, it may be a bit of excitement. There's anxiety. We are called to innovate. We are called to be creative. It can bring about chaos at times. But hopefully what we want is a positive path moving forward. Our expectation is that whatever changes we implement now would assist us in taking next steps. So you may have different roles. You may, in this environment, you may have to be a catalyst. You may have to execute events. You have to facilitate projects. You may have to, but again, you must always identify clear goals. there must be a level of autonomy as well. If you want to get meaningful results, as change agents, we can also be nourishers, where we can help, uplift our workers. We can encourage them, develop a sense of well-being, respect among team members, collegiality in terms of, learning from each other. And this is an excellent place, particularly when it comes to the technology. You may have team members who are great at the technology and others who are struggling. Good opportunity to put two people together with the intention that, people would, there's this peer learning taking place. So I want us to have a look at the Franklin Covey change model. And it sort of gives us an idea of how we see change. This represents the zone of status quo. So this is where we were before COVID. And what has happened then with COVID struck? So an event has taken place, something has happened, we get this dip here. So you have here the zone of disruption. And I don't have to explain to you what that zone of disruption looked like when we were aware of the COVID was on us and the impact. So, things are happening, the disruption is taking place, and we have to get to the point of decision making. So we take a decision as to, what will be done. And then you begin to get into the zone of adoption. But that zone of adoption, there's so many things that are likely to happen in there. In that zone of adoption will not necessarily be that smooth line that we saw in the previous figure. It goes all over the place, because within that you have different personalities. You have the people who are ready to go, they accept the change. You have the people who are change averse, who are resistant. You have the people who would adopt the wait and see attitude. You have the people who just decide, I can't take this, I'm out of here. Some of those who are out of here, they would leave, but some of those who are out of here will be out of here, but in there. They would not have left. And, this is what you have to deal with. And so as a leader, you have a huge responsibility in that zone of adoption to use your communication skills, to use your emotional intelligence, to see how best you can get, those people on board, not with fear, but with, with a growth mindset. What can you do? What are your skill sets? Yes, you're afraid that you might lose your job, but the fear is not going to help you. What the fear should do is to propel you into looking at your skill sets, to look at what skill sets you need to develop in this environment. What it is that you do currently that you're good at, that perhaps you can, convert into a business. So again, as leaders, yes, we have to be aware, we have to take care of ourselves, because if you don't have it, you can't give it. We have to, ensure that we do all the things that Shane mentioned in terms of, our relaxation, our sleep, our diet, our exercise, all of these things, how we manage our families so that we know things are where we want it to be. We have to do this for ourselves, but we also, as leaders, must make the time to help our team members to get out of this zone of adoption, with the intention of moving to the next level where they can go to the zone of better performance. And this is what, this is our end game. In some instances, if people never get out of there, what happens is just this zone of disruption just continues, it just expands, and what you have is pure chaos. And certainly that's not what we want. So a huge responsibility on us as leaders to make to take the right decisions so that we can come out of this crisis, in a more wholesome way, ready to take the next step, ready for that quantum leap, ready to continue to build. If not, things could just crumble around us, and we need to be careful about that. So yeah, so we looked at, so this is what the change model looks like. I hope you've gotten a good grasp of it. But in this environment of rapid change, we have to make the time to discuss with our team members what the change is likely to look like. And sometimes people need to understand why change is necessary if they don't already understand. They need to understand their role in implementing that change, and what not changing the cost to not changing. Sometimes it's not just about the cost. We need to be aware of what it would cost us if we don't change when we need to change. And so that getting buy-in from your team members, again, through your communication, to your emotional intelligence, all of these are important. And so as leaders, we need to guide our teams to change, and there's some things we can do. Our ability to reset, to reprioritize whatever the goals are and our expectations, and when we do that, we sometimes need to look for the low-hanging fruit, things that success breeds success. People like to feel that they've achieved something. So like we heard earlier, the task in bite size. The only way you can eat an elephant is, I hope we don't eat elephants, but is a bite at a time. And so our ability to help people to celebrate, because they achieve something, to break down the task, to how do we help our team members deal with the additional stress that they're dealing with. As leaders, we also have to be coaches in terms of our new approach, the new approach that we can adopt to helping our team members meet their goals. Providing constant feedback. And not only, you get feedback from them, you give them feedback, you communicate with them in a timely manner. They're aware of what's going on. It helps reduce the uncertainty. All of these are roles that we have to take on seriously. So we've dealt with the managing change, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that the next session, which deals with employee engagement, is really again another critical step in terms of the pandemic. Our relationship with our team members, how quickly they're able to adapt to the new environment. What we have seen is that recent research has shown that in some areas in employee engagement, there's been some improvement, and one of the areas that has shown improvement is that of communication. The other is management's interest in the well-being of team members. And I think the example Shane used when he spoke about the company distributing the mindfulness apps, again, that shows the direction of the thinking. So employee engagement is important. But when it comes to employee engagement, one of the things we have to be aware of is the new recruits and onboarding. This really calls for a level of creativity and innovation. Because whereas with your existing staff, these people are aware of your culture, they know how things are done. But if you're bringing in new people, those new entrants, they've not had the exposure to the company that your other team members have got. So it can't be a one size fits all. You now have to develop different strategies to onboard these new recruits. And so if you get it wrong, you may end up spending so much more time and money in trying to recruit the right people for the job. And with the end game in mind, also recognizing that those persons that you may have recruited virtually, that these people may at some point in time come into the workplace. And so you really need to prepare them, and you need to give some serious thought to how you are onboarding your new recruits. It's not business, certainly not business as usual. So when we look at employee engagement, we have to, there are certain things we must pay attention to. We have to remain connected as individuals and as a team. We also need to recognize the opportunities for celebration, having a cocktail evening, having a storytelling, sharing recipes. There's so many things that, that people, recognizing anniversaries, speaking to, whatever personal accomplishments that person may have had, whether it's work or personal. But we need to find those things which keep people together. Yes, you will have some resistance, but again, if you try to pair people and get one to encourage the other, we may be able to achieve what we're looking to achieve. And if it is structured, if it is part of the schedule, then you will get people on board. And hopefully, if you make it engaging and interesting, people will want to continue to come on. But again, let's not overdo it. Let's be mindful of people's time and people's personal challenges, but let us make the effort to remain connected. Provide the updates, what's happening, how the business is doing, whether there have been gains, whether, things are, where the challenges lie. Share that information. It helps make people feel part of the process. And some, the whole opportunity for training. For some reason, some organizations seem to think that, things are not going out they're supposed to go. We should just put a damper on training. No, it's an opportunity to develop and grow people. So, it's an opportunity for people to bridge the gaps in terms of the skill sets that they're deficient in. So, and that could serve as a motivator for your team members as well. And so we also need to identify the individual needs. And, again, during a session, one of the things that came up was that some people are stuck in terms of the equipment they have. So let me say, well, hey, I was given a laptop by the organization, but the screen is small and I have difficulty working with it. There's some organizations may have to look at providing screens, providing, green screens, providing keyboards, providing different apps so that people can work more efficiently. In some cases, you may even have to provide, an office chair, a small computer desk. There are things, and this may sound strange. I've heard people ask, "Who's going to pay for my electricity? Who's going to pay for my internet connection?" So even in terms of how we compensate, we need to ask ourselves some questions in that respect, because people are beginning to look in those directions. So again, don't be close to it. These are possibilities. But let us have an open mind when it comes to the specific needs, because at the end of the day, what you want is that you want productivity, you want performance, you want people to achieve goals, and we have to be very specific in terms of what it is that people are expected to do, because like we said earlier, you're not there to look over their shoulder to see what they're doing. It's about the trust factor. It's also about being clear on objectives and what you expect to come out of a particular, set of activities. What's the outcome that is expected? And that has to be clearly communicated so that there's no ambiguity, that everybody's on the same page and that your team members can function. So at this stage, I think we look at a short video on employee engagement. It's by Gallup-Poll, and we'll just take it from there.
When employees are engaged, when they have those engagement elements going right in their lives, they have higher autonomy, they have higher ownership for the organization, they put in more discretionary effort. We found even in past recessions, engagement was an even stronger predictor of performance. And so there's an element of resiliency. Employees who are engaged are more resilient. They fight through tough times with you. They keep your organization going at a high level, even during those tough times. And they thrive during the good times, even at a faster pace than your competition. So I would think of employee engagement as a competitive advantage, as something that says something about your employment brand and your culture. When you have an engaging culture, we all know what happens inside organizations leaves organizations very quickly now through social media and other forms. People look to their friends for advice on where to work, and they look to all kinds of outlets technologically. And so your employment brand, having an authentic employment brand, starts with having an engaging work environment where people have their performance going right. They feel like they're performing and developing and a part of an important, significant culture that's making a difference.
Okay, great. Okay, so this sort of, emphasized what we spoke of earlier. So we understand, employee engagement requires the support of management. We have to create that positive work environment. Again, even if it's from the person's home, you need to, ask some questions, get a sense of, what's happening with them, how they're able to function. And, we can't overstate this whole question of trust, encouraging trust in leadership. So let's move on to managing performance, which is our final final piece. In terms of managing performance, we must recognize that it calls for some differences, some changes, and our ability to set those clear expectations, to ensure that people know what the goals are, to establish key performance indicators, and those key performance indicators must be measurable, and that is whether you use the balanced scorecard or any other process, having KPIs which is important, and that is the means of you being able to see whether people have fallen short, achieved, or exceeded what the expectation is. And so we spoke earlier about this culture of feedback, and these are a system of monitoring. So whether it's you have a one-on-one, or it's through you have your action plan and you meet and you discuss, so that at least you get a sort of reporting in terms of where people are at. In some instances you may want to do this as a one-on-one. In some instances you may want to do it as a collective. But we need to always understand what is that important goal that has to be achieved. That one thing that if we all do to the best of our ability will ensure that we achieve it. And having a scorecard, having a measure is always a sure means of achieving that. So and the whole question of planning our performance, and Shane spoke to it again, scheduling the time. If it's important enough, you need to schedule it in. And so if you schedule this, well, hey, rather than do this, I should be doing that instead. Rather than do this now, I should be doing this instead. So if you schedule, you plan, whether you plan weekly, you plan daily, you can spend about 30 minutes with your weekly planning, 10 minutes with your daily planning. But when you plan in that way, what it could help you to do is to focus more on what's important. And it helps to protect your time from being gobbled up by tasks that may feel urgent, but they really don't advance your goals. So we need to pay attention to that. And when dealing with our team, we need to always remind the team members of how meaningful their contribution is. The work that they do has meaning, it contributes. There must be, clarity in terms of what's most important. And if there are any roadblocks, what these roadblocks are likely to be, how you could overcome them. One of the things we could also look at is we shouldn't be shifting direction on people. Sometimes you give this person this and that, and we just go all over the place, and we really cause confusion. And people in this environment, people don't need any more chaos in their day. Again, sometimes we have to give team members who have the capacity, the freedom to find better ways to do the work. Once we're certain that the person has the capabilities and the capacity, let's not sit on their heads. Let's give them that, that freedom. We spoke earlier about the time we give for people to share progress, to connect. That's important. we need to encourage our team members to raise questions, if they encounter any challenges, to raise them, and together we can come up with solutions. Or again, if the challenge is one that is specific to the person, it may require a one-on-one. But again, not you giving the answers, but you helping them, with their own problem solving, and decision making by, questioning them and getting them to the place of answering things for themselves. But we need to work through the challenges, because the challenges will be there. I think we've did quite a bit on resilience, so I wouldn't go into too much detail on that. But again, when it comes to we understand that the resilience, it's really our ability to positively cope with the stress and adversity. And I think Shane dealt with that quite adequately in terms of, what are some of the things we can do. But I just want to say that, sometimes when we're in that place of fear, what it sort of can really magnify the uncertainty. And so some of the fears that are real that we face in this environment, there's the fear of people are afraid of contracting the disease. People are concerned about if their contribution to the workplace is meaningful. Some of us may have guilt about not being on the front line, or the people are putting their lives on the line to save us, and what are we doing? There's great uncertainty about our future. Some organizations may have to downsize. Again, that is a real fear for most people. And some of the new things that we have to adapt to, both at home and at work, in itself can provide its own set of challenges. We may have some personal needs, children, elderly parents. They're all a host of challenges people face. And if we sort of buy into these and not, find ways to, get to the place we need to be at on an individual basis, we end up, being in a place of, frustration, anger, feeling overwhelmed, lack of motivation, we have difficulty sleeping, and sadness, and all of these things can overcome. So we need to do something. We need to take control of those of ourselves. We need to, when we use our communication and interpersonal skills with our co-workers, talk about how the pandemic is affecting work, identify some of the things that is causing the stress, what the problems are, dealing with them. Again, having a sense of control is really important. So, with all of this being said, I hope we see, the thread running through all of this in terms of how those competencies and skills are required, particularly in this environment. We have gotten some great nuggets here in terms of some of the things we can do, some of the things we need to look at. Some of the strategies that we can adopt. But the changes is upon us, and we have absolutely no choice, and we have to continue to perform at the levels that that can produce the outcome that we're looking for. We have a responsibility to ourselves, to our team members, to our organizations, to our countries, to ensure that we do not take this as a pause, as a break, as an extended vacation. But we have to face it head on, find the strategies to develop ourselves, because if you haven't got it, you cannot give it. So like, Shane said earlier about, it's not being selfish, put on your mask before you look to put on other people's masks. But we have to keep finding the ways that could get us, to get us through this journey in a wholesome manner, as best as we possibly can, taking into consideration, our own, personal well-being, and that our team members. It is a challenging time. It is a stressful time. It is an unprecedented time. And so we have to deal with it in unprecedented ways. I thank you.
Tekla, thank you so much for that. Certainly, I think as industry leaders, between yourselves, You have built upon what each other have presented, which means that there is definitely a commonality in terms of how we need to be approaching leadership during challenging times. And I dare say that in that particular way, not referencing the COVID pandemic and the epidemic that we are now facing, simply because change really and truly is the only assured constant that we will continue to face. And so I think what has been presented to us today in large measure prepares us for every eventuality that can possibly befall us. So Tekla, thank you so much again for that presentation, all encompassing and a very good way to wrap up our discussions this morning. But before we do so, again, I want to give an opportunity to those who have joined us today to raise their hands or type in any questions that they may have. And while they take a minute to do that, I'm going to throw a couple of questions out to both of you. I must apologize, Renata had to leave us early. But certainly to Shane and Tekla, perhaps you can give us some insights into recommendations on self-care and building resilience. What are some of the easiest, perhaps? We all live in a world which is very dynamic, and so we're always looking for the fastest way to get the results, not necessarily always the best approach. But certainly, what are some of the things that we can begin to do now in the present to build resilience and capacity?
I'll let Shane take this one. Shane?
Okay, Tekla, we'll do. I think, Wendy, some of the easy things I think is, more sleep. Definitely, I think fear keeps people up. And when they try to fill the gap, so to speak, they spend a lot of time on social media, that sort of thing. So definitely more sleep, less social media, consumption, less news consumption, because those things just really keeps fueling the fear, and they work hand in hand in the sense that the fear keeps you up. People can't sleep well. Managing addictions really important, Wendy, because that has crept up a lot, and during this time, because people are trying different ways to cope and fill their time, maybe fill something that is missing. And the World Health Organization has come up with so many disorders. There's even a Netflix disorder, for example, where people, spend too much time, what I call filling the hole in the soul, so to speak, with stuff like that. And it could get very, very addictive. And we tell ourselves our stories to justify why we do it. Sleep, exercise, reduce social media, reduce news intake, use it to, set some goals. I mean, me personally, we just went into a further 3-month state of emergency, and I'm like, I'm going to be the fittest I've ever been at the end of this 3 months. Okay. So that is, turn it into, that's why I talk about pandemic goals, self-care goals, set during that time, that, what can I come out, how can I come out better at the end of the pandemic from a self-care point of view? What do I need to do? And as I said, immediately, more sleep, less social media, less news, set some goals. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. And Shane, yeah. I mean, talk about quick wins. I remember last year, it really helped put things into perspective, because you're so used to being on the go that when you have these immediate stops, cold turkey stops, it becomes really difficult to figure out, okay, what's my purpose? Like, I'm not rushing off to the office this morning. I'm actually at home and I have to face the realities of home. And like you, self-care for me became morning meditation while I sit outside and see the sunrise. I remember calling my brother one day and saying, oh my God, it's a beautiful day outside. And he said, Wendy, it's always a beautiful day. It's just that you're normally in your office, right? Reality check. And I had to sit and think, aha, that was an aha moment. But as well, one of the things that became really very important was healthy eating. As part of a self-care routine, part of that really needs to be taking the opportunity to self-regulate and determine what are some of the things that I need to do to take care of my body as well as my mind. So to your point, Shane, absolutely. Tekla, what about you?
No, the things that Shane has said, would be some of what I would repeat. Meditation, I think, is good, and I think that social media, we need to fast from social media really, because when I look at my day, sometimes you say, but hey, I have so many things to do, but ask yourself how much time you've really spent on social media as compared to doing the things that you really should be doing. And I think that that is meditation is great. I mean, exercise, yes, we all need to do that, because all of us, if we don't, do like Shane said, in terms of scheduling this, most of us have put on a couple extra pounds, during this time. It goes without saying. I mean, the people who have not done so, I have to say hats off to them. I mean, I'm proud of you because, you've kept this weight off all the time, and then all it took was a year of COVID, and then you find that 10 pounds have called on, and you want to know where it came from. So, yes, as leaders, we have to be there for our team, but we must remember that we need to take care of ourselves. If you haven't got it, you cannot give it, and we need to make that a priority, and we need to schedule in those times. And again, be careful about going into those rabbit holes, whether it's Netflix or any form of social media. We need to be aware of that, because it can take time, and it can take away valuable time. And the other thing I want to say, some of the skills that we, it may mean simple things that give us joy, things that we would have liked to have done, but because of our regular work schedule, we weren't able to do, whether it's to bake a cake, whether it's to bake bread, all sorts of things, that we can do. But we need to make it, has to be deliberate. It has to be scheduled. It has to be, hey, this is a commitment to do this, that for me, and my family. Yeah. And that work-life balance, again, it's a great opportunity to really take care of the work-life balance, which is really critical. And I think, for us managers, sometimes particularly women, Shane, no offense meant there, but I think particularly women, the work-life balance is usually more difficult. So, it's something we need to pay attention to, and we need to make use of this opportunity that COVID presents.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. What are some specific challenges that employees are encountering?
I wonder if I might just
Definitely, Shane, go right ahead.
Sorry, Wendy. Yeah, I thought you said something very important there, that we should also think about, what's the next pandemic, so to speak,
Yes.
and are we always going to be coping? And you said something really important there about purpose, and that's really the missing piece when I call the hole in the soul. So we'll continue to try to fill different things. It could, Netflix could have been named something else, and I think really important that people can do during this period is, what's my purpose? Because when you find that, and at least in the way that I do it with people, is that you infuse that now into every aspect of your life, so that your self-care is purpose-based. It's not something that they suggested I should do.
Right.
There's an internal motivation, because it's driven by purpose. Okay, and whether it's your health, whether it's your relationships, whether it's your work, everything now is driven by purpose, as opposed to maybe by fear or whatever it is, and your roots become stronger, so that you're not blown by the winds of the pandemic or something else. And I think, as you said, that really important, and Tekla made a very important point about doing the things that you love to do, just reconnecting, as we say, with that little child, because that's really gives us a good clue into purpose. By the way, our childhood and the things that we had fun, and the magical child who didn't have a worry in the world, found joy in almost little things in the box that the toy came in, as opposed to the box. Sorry, as opposed to the toy.
The toy,
sorry, So sorry, I just thought I'd throw that in, because you made that very important point there.
No, but absolutely, Shane, it is something that the pandemic has taught me, that I need to be more purposeful and conscious. So self-awareness is a big part of what I have focused on and tried to hone a little bit more, because it allows us to apologize less and celebrate more, right? Stop apologizing for not getting the task done. And to the points made earlier, scheduling the time to make sure that it does get done. Taking the time to plan is a big part of less stress and more efficiency. You may spend the extra 10 minutes, and I used to say this all the time in a previous life as well. Invest now so that you can reap the benefits down the line. It's not always going to be this hectic. The unknowns will become more known and understood as measures are put in place to control and handle it. But there will always be something that throws us off.
Wendy, I just want to say one thing. I missed out. In terms of self-care, where we spoke about other things, one of the things we need to look at is connection. Connection. I think it's something that, and if you sort of do some self-introspection now, we recognize that we've been living such busy lives. There are people who, you know, are important to us, who have been important to us in a past life, who we've, you know, ignored completely.
Yes.
You know, and this may be the time to reconnect to significant people. And, you know, we don't know what joy just a phone call to a particular person who we've not spoken to in years could do for their day, particularly in this environment. And I think so connection is really important, and it's something we should really, you know, we should look to do a little more of. And that could serve as part of our self-care as well.
Definitely very good points made there. So again, I'm going to urge those who are on the call to share with us. I'm sure that you too have your survival tips. That's what I've learned to call it for myself. My mental survival, that is. You know, how did you get through the pandemic, which we are still going through? So this is, I don't like to say our new normal, because our new normal will continue to evolve as we live. So every day becomes our new normal. But how have you adjusted to this period of uncertainty? So I'm going to move on to another question. What are some specific challenges that employees are encountering whilst working remotely, and how can they be overcome? Shane and Tekla, what are some of the things that you've heard coming back to you as you've done your training and interfacing, connecting, as you say, Tekla?
Yeah, like I think some of it I may have mentioned earlier, and which, you know, like what took me by surprise was the one about people coming into work and behaving as if they granted you a favor. That was a shock to me. And you know, and supervisor, she was all at her wit's end. She didn't know what to do. So that was one. The whole question of the need for equipment, and it's something some organizations have not thought of, but there is a big need. And what it means is that people may be working under, you know, very challenging conditions. And so it's something, you know, we not just say, well, issue large screens carte blanche to everybody, or issue, you know, whatever to everybody, but again, there may be specific needs based on where people are at. I mean, when my response to that, yes, if I need a big screen, maybe I you know, I would buy one, but you know, everybody can't say that, and we have to be aware of those specifics. So these are some of the things, and the whole question of people with children, whose home size, the size of their home may not allow them to find appropriate space without being disturbed. There are two children of school age, and they on their devices trying to do work, and the, you know, employee has to be attending a meeting. You know, what do you do? So these are some of the challenges I'm hearing. People who have, you know, they can't, in terms of they were at work, they brought in somebody to the house to help with the domestic chores, but because of COVID, because you don't want to expose your family to, you know, somebody coming in from outside, you can't bring people into the home. So you still have, you have to work, you have the children to take care of, you have the husbands, you know, to take care of, you know, the home to take care of, the food, to everything. thing to do. And, you know, this is one individual because the husband may well be out at work. If the husband is at home, then, you know, if this, whichever spouse, whichever way we're looking at this is at home, then that spouse could, you know, you could organize yourself in such a way that, you know, that, but again, that in itself could cause its own set of challenges because the spouse may not be accustomed of doing that and maybe change averse, may not be ready to, you know, to make the adjustment in terms of what's required to ensure the well-being of the family. So but sometimes, maybe particularly sometimes people who may not have children of their own, they may have a difficulty, you know, seeing, and they may just say, you know, get on with it, you know, organize yourself. But it's easy for us to say, get on with it, organize yourself. But people's reality, we really need to take that into consideration. And I think these are some of the you know, in addition to the stress, the different things that I mentioned in terms of what those stressors are now, there are some persons who have some additional stressors. And so, you know, our awareness of that so that we can help them navigate is really important.
And I know, Tekla, you spoke a bit about having a two-parent household, but then we also have the reality, which is a significant one in our region, which is single-parent households where you suddenly become an employee and perhaps an employee at a very senior level with children working from home, and your kids need to be fed and so on and so on and so forth. So again, I think it comes back to being able to plan out your day, making sure that you're planning for sleep, which is going to become even more important and more relevant. And then having a sense of humor about life, you know, and I'm big on having a sense of humor about the things that will happen beyond the pandemic. And so, for example, I think my 5-year-old son met governors and managing directors and CEOs of banks. And thank you to all of you who were so kind in entertaining him for his minute of fame. Because I literally started all of my at-home calls by saying, "This is my son," and he would say hello, and then he would go off on about his business, because we know that children are very persistent, and so we also, as the adults and as the leaders and as the employees, we need to be persistent in finding what works for us, to ensure that we can remain productive and fulfill our own purpose. Shane, what about you?
Well, I think, Wendy, you made a very important point there, which was when I was thinking about my answer about being real, about being authentic. This is my situation, you know, instead of trying to, you know, push your son aside to be quiet and that sort of thing. I think it's really important for people to be real, to be authentic, because what you are actually doing is inviting people into your reality, and that builds the connections that Tekla spoke about. And people begin to appreciate you. I think at a deeper level, because, you know, most likely they're going through the same thing. Okay, and you could encourage people to feel more comfortable about that. When I do my coaching calls, my 6-year-old always wants to see who I'm speaking with, you know, but I think it helps my clients in saying, you know, especially in a remote relationship, well, you know, this guy, you know, has a family too, you know, so
he's real.
Exactly. So I think that is super important, Wendy, and as you said, planning out your days. I've been working primarily remotely or at home for the last 10 years when I left the corporate world, but that still requires, as you said, planning. And even when I went back briefly to really high impact corporate job, it was the same thing. My daughter was 2. I had to get up, and I like to, you know, cook fresh food for her every day. And when she couldn't eat solids, you know, blend it up and that sort of thing. But it was purposeful. You know, I did have, you know, if it's 10 minutes to exercise, I, you know, went out and found something called Tabata, which is a high impact interval training. Trust me, if you haven't been exercising and you do 8 minutes of that, right, you'll be on the floor. I promise you. Okay, so I tell people, Tabata, I got it. Tabata, Trust me, my daughter used to be, Daddy, are you okay? So I was like, if you don't have 8 minutes, if you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life. Okay.
All right, there you go.
So and that's why I think purpose comes in, because literally if you go and Google it, you can find right diets, right exercises, that you get tons of stuff out there. But unless you find the internal motivation and purpose to do it, your why, so to speak, or try to figure out what has you stuck, from getting ahead. And I have a free training program on getting unstuck, and it applies to almost anything. You just go to my website, shaneram.com, and it comes up on the first page. And that really drives through everything. So as you said, being real, sharing your life, and not being ashamed of whether you live in a 2-bedroom and this is your reality. I think people connect with you a lot better when you do that. Definitely planning, plan it out. Get up a lot earlier if you need to get to, and like even this week was tough for me last week. I homeschooling every day until 11 or 11:30, and with a 6-year-old, there's you run into the kitchen getting lunch prepared, but you can't allow at least a 6-year-old to be on her own. They will get distracted, so you have to be there in the asynchronous classes as well, to make sure that they do it. But that's just it's about the questions. How can I get good at this? How could I master it? This is the reality. What are the tools? And you find ways. You find the 8-minute tomato. You find quick meals. Just get everything done. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big part of our success is being able to, I always say, walk 5 years into the future and look back. And the issue that you're facing now, if it's not as significant in the grand scheme of life 5 years from today, then it's not as significant as it is today, or as it appears to be today. So it's a lot of mental tuning. And I think Shane spent quite a bit of time dialoguing on this morning. It does require you to dig in deep and recognize, one, you're really not in this alone. So it's quite good, Shane, if your daughter has a moment where she wants her moment of fame with you, to help people realize that, if Shane can do it and lead me through this, I can do it too. Because, it's just a matter of figuring out for self what's important in the moment. Keeping my job is very important. Yeah.
I need to keep the kids fed and everything else. So I really need to take positive and decisive actions to get me where I need to be, right? So in terms of managing the human resource now, managing perhaps what is the most critical function, asset, resource that any organization has, I mean, we've spoken quite a bit about it, but what, if anything else, anything more, would you say has changed? And what are the distinct differences that we are likely to see moving forward? Do we see this at home working, according to Renata, at home working? So welcome to my kitchen. Wish you could smell what's bubbling in my pot right now, but you can't. What do you see as being the ongoing change that we are likely to see going forward? Go ahead.
I can go or Tekla, if you
go
want
right
to
ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Shane.
Okay. Well, I think that in terms of managing the human resources, firstly, we need to, HR persons and leaders need to acknowledge that the resource that has been getting us through this pandemic and will get us through this pandemic is your people.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the first thing that we need to stop, and really, if that cliche of people are your most important resource isn't evident now, then you've completely missed the opportunity.
Right?
You've missed the mark, right?
Yeah.
To see that. So I think if we take that perspective, then we as leaders need to put ourselves into their shoes. Tekla spoke about empathy. What are they going through. Now is the time to show that emotional intelligence and to understand what it is that they're going through. As I suggest, when I wrote my book, Future Ready Leadership, that I published last year, what I'm seeing and what prompted me to actually think about the title way before the pandemic actually ever happened was that the pace of change is happening a lot quicker, and these quote unquote pandemics will continue to happen at a faster rate. And when I say that, it doesn't have to be all medical, the next one could be around food and whatever. So to use this as a real testing ground, so to speak, to understand and do scenario planning in a much different way. Assume that we're going to have several pandemics coming along the road, and do some scenario planning, understand how it's going to impact my employees, how it's going to impact their ways of working, the technology that is going to be needed, how we're going to interact with the customer, etc. So I think now is the perfect time for HR and leaders to sit down and really do some scenario planning. This pandemic gave us a good idea of what is possible, because most scenarios planning would have completely missed something like this. And now we could use our mind to project and unfortunately ask the question, how much worse can this get? Okay, what are the possibilities? It's serious. If we go into a food pandemic, what is that going to look like? And not necessarily be, the doom and gloom kind of thing, but really understand, how this is going to affect people who are our employees. Do some scenario planning around it and prepare as best as you can.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. For me, what I would say, I think as employers, we need to be more people focused. We definitely need to be. In the past, we've heard, sort of lip service being played to HR as a strategic partner. You have no choice but to have HR as a strategic partner in this environment. And I think if people have not seen that as the need for that, then there needs to be a rethink. Because like Shane just said, it's cliche to say, our people are our greatest asset. But we have to put, some teeth behind that. And so how we interact with our team members, our approach, our mindsets, in terms of how we interact with our team members. People when it comes to productivity, we have people say that, our people are lazy. I say the same people we say that are lazy. These people go to North America, they work 3-4 jobs. They're the best employees out. We need to ask ourselves, is it how we deal with people? Is there an opportunity there for us to change? I mean, we have all the concepts, we read about them, we know them, intuitively, we know them. But in terms of practicing, do we practice some of those concepts that we hear of, that we learn? Or it's just something, at the sort of just a knowledge, just good to have, good to know, but not good to do, not good to act. And I think we need to have a change of mindset where we have to change our approach to our interaction with people if we expect to see a different result, if we expect to see change. And I think this is for some of us, it may sound high risk. Some of us may not be brave enough to want to do it, but I think we need to. I mean, the research is there. We can read of all sorts of companies who have, tried different approaches, but we're stuck in a mode where it's difficult to shift. And I think what the pandemic is calling us to do is to make that shift. And if we don't make that shift, we will come out of it, likely in a worse place than we were before. And that shouldn't, it would be an opportunity missed. And I think it's an opportunity we cannot afford to miss.
Yes, absolutely. So you both made a very good point. Actually, I think I started by speaking about the human resource and the human asset. I think And this is open to further discussion, obviously, but I think that we no longer have human resource managers and human resource practitioners. I think that every single individual within the organization has automatically taken on the responsibility of human resource manager, of self, peers, team, and even leaders in some instances, because they are people too. We are people too. So in terms of training for the ongoing changes that need to happen in order to continue to prepare us for, as Shane said, the ever-present pandemics that we are going to continue to face as industry changes. And certainly in the banking sector, in the financial services sector, we have seen changes that are unprecedented. And I say this with a 24-year background, 26-year background in the industry. However, we also know that one of the first budgets to be cut within organizations during times of change, perhaps when it's most needed, is the training budget. So what are your thoughts on what is the best time to train? I mean, kudos to those who are on the call today. Thank you so much for being here, because clearly you recognize the opportunities for having these ongoing discussions, and hopefully you're still finding value in it. But what about those who are of the mindset that we don't have the time for it? There's too much going on, so we need to push training back, as opposed to making a conscientious effort to pull training in during these difficult times. What is your thought?
You know, I think what I would say on that is that, I mean, again, a change of mindset is needed. We have to see it as an investment, not as a cost. And if we continue to see it as a cost, that will be the thinking. So it's about, you know, how we need to invest in our people so that we can get them where we. But again, it is about, you know, doing the analysis, recognizing what the skill gaps are, and targeting the training to, you know, to bridge that gap, to you know, be able to overcome some of these challenges. But I think the first thing that's required is a change of mindset, and to recognize it's an investment in what you consider to be your most important asset. And we know if you have assets and you do not nurture them, you do not take care of them, if you have an expensive car and you do not service it regularly, it will not deliver for you what you expect of it. And we could apply that same principle to how we deal with our people. So I think it's, you know, it's not, you know, the best decision to make, to figure, well, you know, like you said, the first thing that happens is, you know, the training budget gets cut because we have other things that are more important that we need to spend on. I think it has to be well thought of. It has to be, you know, scientifically arrived at, in terms of, you know, knowing what skills, you know where you're going, you know what your purpose is, you know what your objective is, you know what you need to get there. Ensure that your people are upskilled so that they can deliver on what you want to do. You cannot, you know, especially in this environment where, you know, some people are working from home. So the, you know, that sort of the organic learning from each other is not happening. And you can also use the training as a means of motivating your team, so that if you invest in them, they feel, you know, that they're important. What they do is, you know, adds value. And so it gives them a sense of, hey, you know, I mean something to this organization. So there are a number of ways, it serves a number of purpose. It serves, you know, like I said, in terms of motivating the team, in terms of upskilling people, in terms of keeping people engaged, you know, looking at what your skill sets, your skill gaps are, and bridging that gap. But we need, it's, you know, I don't think it's a good decision. Again, maybe, you know, I'm speaking because there's some level of self-interest here. I deliver soft skills training, but I think it's a sad thing when organizations could see training their team members as a cost or an expense, and not as an investment.
Shane, what's your mindset? Thank you, Tekla.
I think, first of all, I think I've always been an advocate for HR persons, managers, whatever we call it, leaders, to have a coaching mindset and coaching skills. And what I mean by that is, how do you deal with a CEO or an executive who makes decisions like that? So I'll give you like a practical example that I get a lot of people to, make changes and significant changes, as Tekla said, in mindset. So 3 questions, right? So what's the worst thing that will happen if we don't do training or we discontinue training right now? What's the worst thing that could happen if we do training and have a training budget and keep the training budget? Of the 2 previous scenarios, which one is worse? Okay. And so we have, and when I talk about the coaching mindset and the coaching skills, is not about beating the same door and trying to tell and to tell and to tell. Coaching is about asking questions to get people to come to their own realization. So if you ask questions as opposed to, Mr. CEO, we need the training budget. Training is important. You keep knocking the same story over and over, and people don't like to be told what to do. Yeah. So how can we ask the right questions so that they come to the realization that we do need to train people? And Renato spoke about one of the 8 elements for accountability is capabilities. Okay. How are we, creating the capabilities within our organization to cope and to survive now, but also to thrive in the future? We know the need to retool and to reskill. So that has to come to the fore. And this is where now I keep, talking about HR's ability to really have a seat at the table, and what are the skills they need to bring to the fore the importance, instead of always trying to convince someone. Whereas if we coach someone into the realization that this is actually critical by learning to ask the right questions.
Absolutely. I certainly think that has been tremendous food for thought. And in my days as a coach in the industry, I'm not by any means into sports. So let me just declare my hand now, just in case I get this all twisted. Okay, folks, get the message. Ignore the messenger who's delivering. So think of it as being a sports person, golfer. And you consistently swing, and you spend your entire day swinging, and at the end of the day, you're in a big hole because you've missed the ball every single time. And then you have someone standing next to you saying, okay, if you stand this way and raise your left shoulder just a half an inch more and hold your thumb to the golf club, just 2 inches a little bit lower, you swing again, you miss it again, but you're a little bit closer. And you go through that process every day for a week, where someone is helping you to fine-tune the process that has brought you results. At the end of that week, you may have actually hit the ball once. And at the end of 2 weeks, you may have actually hit that ball 3 or 4 times. That is what your leader is meant to be with you. So there are lots of persons out there who are going through really difficult times in this pandemic, and they're trying. Because I absolutely refuse to believe that anyone wakes up on any given day with the intention of being mediocre. I think everyone wakes up every morning, has breakfast, goes through that morning routine, and comes to work with the intention of performing. What you need to do as an employee, however, is take responsibility, hold yourself accountable for sharing your challenges and your experiences, because your leader really isn't a mind reader. You need to use that coaching opportunity to speak about your challenges, and hopefully you can come together as a unit to determine how you can work through it, beyond it, past it, to ensure that you feel satisfied with your output at the end of the day, which ultimately feeds into the vision of the organization and delivers the results that everybody is looking for, that you can celebrate as well. So with that said, I really want to thank all of you who joined us today as we walk through the process of leading through change, future-ready leadership, which Shane shared some of his insights with us on, and of course, preparing for success and the steps necessary to get us there, igniting work accountability with Renata. I certainly hope that you are satisfied with the information that was shared today, and I look forward to hosting you again next week as we begin to take a look at climate resilient financing, particularly as we're going into what has become the norm for us in the Caribbean, but it's a lot more active than it has been in the past, the hurricane season. So these are some of the pandemics that we can plan for. CAB will be persistent as your coach in providing you the training opportunities, but please, we implore you to come to the table. Let's sit down, let's have these discussions so that at the end of the day, the industry remains stronger and more resilient because of you. Thank you all so much, and do have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Shane, nice meeting you.
Same here.
What was the name of your book you said?
It's called Future Ready Leadership. It's
Oh,
on
Future Ready
Amazon.
Leadership. Okay.
Yeah, 8
Good.
must-have strategies for tomorrow's leaders.
Okay.
And Shane, we'll be happy to share that as well for our members who have joined us and for those who will join us later on at their own leisure.
Okay.
All right, so thank you again, everyone. Do have a wonderful day. Alana, Fawzia, Lillian, and Revelino, thank you again for your time. Take care, everyone.
Most welcome.
Okay, thanks much. Bye.
Bye.